Hey, so I'm super happy right now. I received my first donation ever from a Duncan McRae, and in honor of that, I'm going to make a free series on pulse width modulation. You might think this is a basic subject, but I guarantee if you watch this entire series, you're going to learn a bunch of new things about pulse width modulation that you never knew. In this first video, I'm going to just focus on the plain pulse width modulation that you know and love, but I'm going to set up parameters in such a way that's going to carry over to the next video, so it is worth watching this one. I'm starting out with an initialized AL-1, and I'm going to go ahead and turn down oscillator 1, and I might as well just turn this into a pulse waveform right now. And let's now jump over the filter and bypass it, and then the amp, I'm going to bypass the driver, and then turn the envelope into a gate style envelope. Right now, this is what it sounds like, and actually I want to show you through an oscilloscope just a bare bones square wave, the square wave that you know and love. You can see right here that the pulse width is on 50, and if I were to change that parameter, we can go up in a positive direction, but then we can also go down in a negative direction. Now, this is important because different synths, analog synths, behave in different ways. And I'm actually going to show you with the MS-20 and also the Poly6 how they work. So I'm going to solo that MS-20, and then because the blank patch that they give you isn't exactly initialized, I'm just going to run through without really explaining what I'm doing, because I really just want to show you how the MS-20 does pulse width modulation. Okay, so we should have a blank square wave. And then I'm going to actually change this parameter on the face of the Chronos itself, because you can't see the oscilloscope if I try to do it on the software. So you can see we just went in a positive direction in the pulse width modulation by moving this parameter from its minimum to its maximum value. We actually can go in the negative direction if we patch the output into a mixer and then patch that output into the VCA in, and then in the mixer actually flip the polarity. But this isn't about that. This is about just showing that different synths have their pulse width modulation go in different ways. So again, I just opened up a Poly6 and I'm going to just change a few parameters to initialize it. I don't want keyboard tracking on. I'll just put the amp on gate. I don't want any envelope generator intensity on the filter, and I want no resonance cut off all the way up. Let's turn the sub oscillator off. Let's turn chorus off. Let's put the synth on pulse width, and again, let's change this parameter from the Chronos itself while looking at the oscilloscope. So bare bones square wave, except I put the I put the parameter all the way up. There we go. Bare bones square wave, negative direction. So different synths, different pulse width modulation directions. The reason AL-1, if I didn't already mention it, is the reason AL-1 can go in both directions is so it can mimic different analog synthesizers, because you don't really know what they are capable of. So I can turn this off and go back to AL-1, which is the best synth ever. I mean, not ever. I mean, I guess Mod 7 is the best synth ever, but cool. So now I want to modulate this pulse width with an LFO, but instead of using an LFO by itself, I'm going to use an AMS mixer. So let me jump over to the AMS mixer and pop open our source for A as LFO1. I'm actually going to turn this on A times B. And I'm going to use switch 1 as a kind of modulator for A. Now, this is not a tutorial in AMS mixers, so you're just going to have to trust me that switch 1 is now turning on LFO1 or turning on LFO1's effect on our pulse width. And since the switch is off, it's LFO1 is allowed to remain active. It's when I turn the switch on that it's disabling LFO1. So anyway, LFO1 is now patched into our pulse width. And so if I were to turn this, oh, LFO1 is traveling really fast. Let's go ahead and turn that down to about 15. I like the way it sounds there. So LFO1 patched into pulse width. Now let's turn this up. And you can see that at 50, we're actually traveling the full range of this parameter, both positive and negative. But I don't actually want that. But let me just show you that that's exactly what's happening by going up to 100. Now we'd be going beyond the full range of this parameter. And the reason they do it like that is so that half of the LFO, you could say one of the polarities of the LFO controls the entirety of the range of this parameter. So let me put this at 0, and then jump over to the LFO page. And you'll see when I hit the button, it'll travel from all the way from the bottom, which is where we just put the parameter, back up to the top, and it'll hit the silence there, and then go back down to the bottom silence. But then it'll remain silent for the negative portion of this LFO. So just listen. Yep, because we already hit silence. There's nowhere else to go after that. But I don't want to travel the full range. Instead, I really only want to travel the range in the positive direction. So I'm going to go ahead and if I put this on 50, I'd still be getting the full range. And putting this on 50. But instead of putting it on 50, I'm now going to put it at 25, so I only get half of the range. But with the LFO, the way it is, it's acting it's acting bipolar when I want it to act unipolar. So let me go ahead and put the offset. Where's my offset? Here it is. Let's put it all the way up. My goal is to make it so we're starting off in the middle and then we're traveling in a positive direction. So we're not starting off actually in the middle. We're starting off kind of at 25% of the way. And that's because that's technically where this is. It's like 25% of the way, because now the entirety of this is just affecting just the top modulation of this parameter. So I have to do a phase offset or start phase offset. Let's put that down to 90. Cool. So now we'll start off in the middle, go up to the silence, and go back down in the middle, bounce back, go up to silence. Awesome. And just to demonstrate why we set up that controller earlier, if I turn this on, we just go back to a regular square wave. And that's it for this video. This is a pretty simple setup. You'll probably know how to do this if you're using some other synth other than the Kronos. And that's kind of what I want to do. I want to start explaining things more for like general synthesis and not so much just focus on the Kronos. So yeah, if you're able to do this with like analog and live, I'd be super stoked. All you need is just to be able to do pulse width modulation and then turn that modulation off with a switch. So I'll see you in part 2 when I'm going to go over some pretty complicated, pretty cool stuff. All right, bye.